Welcome to Literacy Year 3 on a Wednesday morning. I hope you're really enjoying the Professor Pete story and you're really starting to get used to the sequence that everything comes in. I hope you managed to get your story maps done yesterday. We will have enjoyed reading those very much, and your story map will be able to help you with the rest of your Professor Pete work. So don't lose it, because we're going to be adding to it and we're even going to be doing something today. So today in our literacy lesson, we are going to be looking at collecting and classifying words, and we are going to be looking at those because they are going to be used in future writing. So that's really important. Okay, and we're going to be doing today, we're going to be scanning a text. That means looking for things in a text. We can highlight words using our VCOP techniques. And I can find and select some alternatives, and that's all about up-leveling our work, isn't it? And making it even better by using even better language than the language that we've already chosen. So what I wanted to do first of all is go back through, and you guys know this because you've been doing it for so long, but your grown-ups that are watching this might be a little bit confused and thinking, what on earth is Mrs. Pleasure talking about? So when we are looking at VCOP, what we are looking at is basically vocabulary, conjunctions, openers, and punctuation. And we are digging out and picking out all the really interesting bits that are in our writing. So when we're thinking about vocabulary, what we're looking at, okay, is we're just looking for the exciting vocab. Okay, so can we spot adjectives? And double adjectives are really good things to spot. And that's where we can up-level our writing really easily to make it even more interesting for our readers. Have we got verbs in there? Have we got really interesting verbs? Have we used similes? And how can we make that even better in our own writing? Now, if we remember conjunctions, okay, what conjunctions have been used in the writing, and can we magpie any of them for our work? Okay, so remember that conjunction is just something that connects two sentences together. Okay, and when we've spotted a conjunction, are we going to be able to think of any better ones for ourselves? Has the author used any interesting sentence openers that you would like to use? Okay, so quite often the really good sentence openers, the word ends in ly, and these are our adverbs, and they are really good sentence openers, and that's because it tells us how something is happening. Okay, and when we read Professor Pete, we'll be able to spot some of those really quickly. And what we're looking at is, that's a great sentence opener, but can we think of anything that's even better? And of course, we want to use different types of punctuation in our story. And hopefully, when we're reading these, we might find some that we want to magpie for our own writing. And some of them is really important. So for our speech, we want to make sure that we've got inverted commas. If somebody is asking a question, we want to make sure that we put the right punctuation with that. And we want to make sure that we've got commas in the right place and maybe other different pieces of punctuation. So the first thing we need is we need to have our Professor Pete story somewhere that we can see it. Okay, so it might be on that PDF from the lesson on Wednesday. It might be that you've got it and you've been able to print it off. Okay, but we need to have a look at that Professor Pete. Okay, and what I want you to do is want you to get a piece of paper, and you are going to split your page. Okay, and you are going to split it into four different areas, four different parts. We're actually splitting it into quarters, aren't we? Because we're splitting it into four. Okay, so I want you to get a piece of paper and you're going to have 4 headings. You're going to have vocab, conjunctions, openers, and punctuation. Okay, and what we're going to do, we're going to go through the first little bit of Professor Pete, and we are going to note down, and I'm going to do it on here actually. So we're going to note down all the different things that we find, okay? So the first thing we are going to do, okay, I am going to read out the first little bit. So straight away, crash. The amazing silver time machine landed with an almighty thud. So in that sentence, what have we got there that we can pick out on there? Well, straight away, our vocab tells us that we've got a double adjective sentence. And what is that in that sentence? The amazing silver time machine landed with an almighty thud. Well, hopefully you've picked out that the double adjective in that sentence is amazing silver. So we can write amazing silver. Okay, and that's really good because we know we've got a time machine, but it is telling us 2 more pieces of information. It's telling us that it's amazing because, let's face it, time machines are amazing, but it's also telling us it's silver. So we can picture that in our head, and it's offering us more information about that time machine. Now, also there, we had a really nice descriptive language. Okay, and that descriptive language at the very start of that story was crash. But what piece of punctuation has it got at the beginning? That's right, it's got an exclamation mark. Okay, and that tells us that it was loud and it was sudden and it was crash. Okay, and that's what that piece of punctuation does for us. Okay, let's have a look at our next sentence. Carefully, Professor Pete opened the door before setting out into the street. Now, what sentence starter have we got there? What sort of an opener have we got? How is Professor Pete opening the door? He's doing it carefully, isn't he? Okay, and that is one of our sentence openers. It ends in ly, okay, and it's an adverb because it's telling us how Professor Pete opened the door. He opened it carefully. He didn't open it quickly. He didn't open it suddenly. He opened it carefully. So that's a really good opener for us. Professor Pete opened the door before stepping out into the street. He looked around in amazement. The ground was covered in rubble, while the sky was filled with grey smoke. Where had he landed this time? What can we spot from those sentences, Year 3? He looked around in amazement. The ground was covered in rubble, while the sky was filled with grey smoke. Where had he landed this time? Well, one of the things I'm going to write on here is grey smoke. Because we've got one adjective here, haven't we? We've got the adjective grey, okay? But I think later on we can come back to that and make it even better. That little paragraph finishes, where had he landed this time? What do we need to make sure, if we're asking that question, our sentence finishes with? It's asking a question, isn't it? Okay, where had he landed this time? Okay, and even though there isn't anybody speaking at this point, the writer is asking you a question. So we still need to make sure that we have got a question mark in our writing. And that's the same if someone is speaking, but also if someone is writing. Let's carry on for a bit longer. At that moment, he heard a booming voice from behind him. Now, although that's not an adverb, that is a really good sentence opener. And it's a really interesting way of starting our new sentence. So that's one that you might like to magpie for your own piece of work, because I think that's a great opener. At that moment, he heard a booming voice from behind him. What's the adjective in that sentence? Hopefully you've spotted it's a booming voice. Okay, and that means when I'm reading the story, I know that the voice is, "What are you doing out in the open?" Because it's a booming voice. Okay, so that extra information for the reader tells me how the man is speaking. If I didn't have that really good adjective of booming, I might say it, "What are you doing out in the open?" Or, "What are you doing out in the open?" But because I know it's a booming voice, okay, I can make my voice sound like, I can imagine what that voice sounds like. And again, what are you doing out in the open? Okay, we need to make sure we've got punctuations, because the man, the voice is still asking a question, isn't he? Professor Pete turned quickly and saw a man dressed in a long black coat and a domed metal helmet. Well, we've got two double adjectives there, haven't we? We've got long black coat. I'm going to need a bigger piece of paper. So we've got long black coat, and we've also got domed metal helmet. Okay, so that's some really good double adjectives there. Maybe we can add some more to it. "Get into the shouter now," he roared. Well, if you can see your copy of this story, what has been used at the end of that sentence? It's an exclamation mark, isn't it? What is that exclamation mark for? Why have we got an exclamation mark there? Is it because he's talking really quietly? It's not, is it? It's because he's shouting. Okay, and that tells the reader that the man is using his big voice, okay? Not just because it says he roared, but because it's got the exclamation mark. Pete had no idea what was going on, but he thought he should do as he was told. Quickly, he ran with speed down some steps which led to the underground train. What have we got there? Quickly, he ran with speed down some steps which led to the underground train. We've got an opener there, haven't we? What's the opener? Quickly. And we can often tell whether it's an adverb or not, because can you see what piece of punctuation you have after an adverb? So you've got carefully further up the story, and you've now got quickly. What sort of punctuation follows those words? It's a comma. And we will always have a comma after an adverb that starts a sentence. We've also got a connective in this sentence as well. Remember, a connective joins two sentences together or extends the sentence. Quickly, he ran with speed down some steps, which led to the underground trains. So we've got that extra information, haven't we, after our connective. And the connective in that sentence is which. And that makes us, that extends that sentence, doesn't it? It makes it more interesting, because it would have made sense saying quickly he ran with some speed down some steps. Okay, but it's given us extra information as to where those steps lead to. Professor Pete realised he must be in London in World War II, in the middle of an air raid. Suspense filled the atmosphere, huddled groups, babies crying, and worried-looking faces surrounded him. What have we got in that last sentence? Now, I think this is a great phrase. Suspense filled the atmosphere. My writing's getting a bit strange, isn't it? Suspense filled the... Ooh. Suspense filled the atmosphere. And that is a great way to start a sentence. What a fantastic way to start a sentence. Suspense filled the atmosphere. And what it's telling us if it's suspense, it's all a bit, oh, we don't quite know what's going to happen. Everyone's a little bit worried. No one quite knows what's going on. Huddled groups, babies crying, and worried-looking faces surrounded him. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave the story here, and you are going to carry on analysing your text and going through everything that's in that story and making notes and trying to put it into the 4 different categories, okay, of vocab, connectives, openers, and punctuation. So pause your video here and carry on doing the task that I've just been showing you. Okay, year 3, so hopefully you've had time to go through the rest of your story and pick out all your connectives and all your vocab and the punctuation that you liked and your openers that you liked as well. So hopefully you've got a nice big list of different things that you've liked or things that you can magpie. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a look and see how we can make that even better. Okay, so I've picked out on here a couple of things that we talked about in the first paragraph or so. And the first one I want to have a look at is that sentence opener, carefully. Now, this is a great sentence starter because it tells us how Professor Pete is opening the door. But are there some other words that we could use instead? Now, remember, we're trying to think of words that end in ly for that adverb. So if I'm thinking carefully, what else could we use? Well, we could use silently. We could use silently, couldn't we? It's still an adverb, okay, but also it still tells us that Professor Pete is trying to be really careful. What other words could we use? We could use, if we wanted to change it completely, okay, we could have it after a loud crash and a loud bang, we could have suddenly, couldn't we? Okay, and that gives that sentence different meaning. It means he's opened it really quickly, okay, and that changes the meaning of the word, but we're still using a really good adverb and a really good sentence opener. Let's have a look a bit further down. One of the sentences says, the ground was covered in rubble while the sky was filled with grey smoke. So we've got an adjective there, haven't we, of what the smoke is like. The smoke is grey. But can we make that a double adjective? Now, if you think of smoke and you think just after a bombing raid, what it might be like, what is that smoke going to be like? Well, it might be thick grey smoke. Okay, it might be thick and grey. What else could it be like? It could be, we could use a good simile with grey smoke as there we go. We could have with grey smoke as thick as night. So again, it's given us that atmosphere that everything's really thick and it's not very nice and it's really difficult to breathe. Okay, but we're not telling our reader, are we? We're giving them the imagination. The man with the domed hat, metal helmet. Okay, we know his voice is booming. Okay, but how could we make that more interesting? Well, one thing I could thought of was it could be a loud, booming voice. But let's imagine what that man is like. Maybe it could be a deep, booming voice. Okay, and that's giving our reader some extra information as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to up-level our words. Okay, we are going to take those words that we have found through the piece of writing, and we are going to start adding extra little bits of information. We are going to make this even more interesting than the story is for already. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video here and start picking out those double adjectives and really start thinking about how we can make this piece of work even more interesting. So for the moment, we're looking at double adjectives, and you're going to go through and you're going to up-level your work to make double adjectives and make it even more interesting. So pause your video here. Okay, have you done that, Year 3? I hope you've got some fantastic double A sentences now to have a look at, or some double A phrases that you can use. So the last thing we're going to do today is you're going to go back to your story map that you did yesterday, and you're going to start adding these double A phrases onto your map. Now I can't do this and show you because it's not a very good picture. So what I have done, I have already done this on my story map. So can you see there that where my rubble and where Professor Pete didn't know where he was, I've written thick grey smoke, okay, because I really like that. And then where my man was, okay, I've written deep booming, okay, just to remind me that that's a really good double adjective sentence now. So I was having a think and I was having a look and I thought, well, we know it's happening in an air raid in 1940. So maybe I want to add on to my information that we know it's called the Blitz. So maybe Professor Pete has this information and he can realise that he's in the middle of the Blitz when his time machine comes out. Okay, maybe we want different words to describe the boy. So the boy to begin with is a small, frightened boy. But I thought, well, maybe that boy could be terrified. Okay, so you're now going to have a look at your story map. Okay, and you're going to go onto your story map and make notes and add those double adjectives onto your story map so that you can start really planning your own story. So we've done quite a bit today, haven't we, Year 3? We've got a lot done looking at our vocabulary. and looking how we can edit and improve and up-level those words. So the one thing that I want you to have a think about is what else could you change in that story? Okay, and we're going to be having a look tomorrow at that, but maybe there are some things that you could change in that story. So I will see you tomorrow for more Professor Pete and the Lost Boy.